Well, while those posts are charring, I want to take a few minutes and kind of dive back into some of the things I've talked about in the past, namely identity. A couple months ago, I talked about what it means to be a beloved child of God. A little loved and cherished child of God, and what that means in our relationship to Him. And now I want to dip my toe um, into a little bit what our identity means in the masculine or in the feminine. And this is something that, there's no shortage of commentary out there, all sorts of views and philosophies in the culture and within the church, um, meaning the universal church, all Christians, and even some varying opinions on what it means to be a man or to be a woman, even within the Catholic Church. And I'm certainly not going to try to give an all inclusive definition or view or anything like that. But I would like to share some things that I've learned that have that have really shifted how I see, what my identity is as a man and what my wife or my daughters or anybody else, their identity as a woman. And so I want to go back to the garden. Um, it's been a while since I've talked about the garden, but it's still just such um, an important story. What happened and how it happened. I think is so important to us, and I don't think. Well, I'll just speak for myself. I didn't understand the story well enough to know how it would affect me. And so, while I think we've all heard the story, um, God created all the animals, then He created Adam, and Adam was lonely. It was not good that man should be alone. And so He put the man into a deep sleep and took a rib out, and from the rib created woman. And they lived their life together in the garden with God, and then Satan came in, tempted the woman with the fruit, etc., etc. I'm obviously not going to contradict any of that, um, but I'm going to point out a few things that I've learned. John Paul II wrote about something called original solitude, and in that he made some interesting points. And if you'll forgive me if I, miss a detail here or there, but I'm just going to give a general overview. He said that when we really have to look at the language that was used in that narrative, um, that when God created man, Adam, that the word that was used there was a Hebrew word, Adam. And Adam was not just a name, like we would call somebody we know today, Adam. Adam was actually, it meant human or humanity. And that it was in that original solitude in Adam, and I'm going to editorialize a little bit here, throw my own 2 cents in here, that within Adam was all of humanity, both the male and the female. And because we were created in God's image, we were created for relationship. And as Adam, there could be no relationship. And so it was Adam, the man or humanity, that God put into a deep sleep. And from Adam came Eve. So, what does that mean? Well, in my mind, it means a few different things. One, it means that, it wasn't the male that was created first, and then from him the female. It would seem that in Adam contained all of humanity, both male and female. And because there could be no relationship there, That is when God put Adam into the deep sleep and took the rib from his side and made woman. Now, here's another interesting thing that I learned. The word rib there, I can't remember what it is in the Hebrew. You'll have to forgive me. That word was used a lot in the Old Testament. And that is the only place in the New Testament where that word was translated into rib. Every other time that word was used to describe something more like a side room or a side, tabernacle or what have you. And so it would seem that it wasn't a rib that God took out of a male to create a female. It would seem that God took humanity, Adam, and separated the masculine and the feminine. And so there isn't this first was male and then female. No, we were all created, both men and women, in the image and likeness of God, in Adam. And it was only in that sleep when he split those two. I do remember the word for after the split, and I might mispronounce it, but it was so that the Hebrew text used Adam before. Sorry, my lighting's getting all screwy. So it used Adam for before, meaning humanity, human. And after, it was Ish and Isha. I think I'm pronouncing those correctly. To distinguish between the man and the woman, the male and the female. And there's more to this story that I want to continue diving deeply into. But so here's the lesson, I think, though, from kind of, in my mind, reframing that a little bit. It's not that God created man and then from him created woman. It's that God created humanity, saw that there needed to be a relationship there, and so separated, took one of the sides, that femininity, I would even say that feminine genius, which is something we'll talk about more later, away from the masculine genius, separated those so that then they could come back together in relationship to more better be image bearers of God, who is a Trinity. He is a relationship. So here's the main takeaway from this. If Adam was created in the image and likeness of God, and if then that was split into masculinity and femininity, and one of our goals is to be image bearers of God, then there's a part of that image that I naturally do not possess. I don't possess the femininity or the feminine genius. I don't have it. But that means that to become a better image of God, then I need to let some of that feminine influence into me. You know, the masculinity, a lot of that comes naturally, and a lot of that's twisted and distorted. That's a little bit further down the story. But just the fact that if I want to be a better image of God, who God is, that Adam was created in the image of, then that means that I need to let myself be influenced by the feminine. I need to continue in my masculinity and what that means, and we can get into more of that later down the road. I'm sure we'll kick a hornet's nest with that one. If I truly want to be closer to God, to be a better image of Him, then I have to take the masculinity that I possess and I have to be influenced by the feminine, because those together were the image of God, the full, total image of God. And the opposite is true. You know, if I were a woman, I probably wouldn't be out here like a moron freezing, charring logs. I'd be smarter than that if I were a woman. But if I were a woman, I would take what I have in my femininity and to be a better image of God, I would allow myself to be influenced by the masculine. And that's been a paradigm shift in my mind. You know, a lot. I spent a lot of my life, especially within the church and growing, just pursuing the masculine and the masculine and the masculine. How, you know, I want to be as as masculine, true masculinity as I can be, which is not a bad thing, but I also need to let myself be influenced by the feminine. Let me know what you guys think.